Hey guys, today we're going to be replacing the oil pressure sensor on this LS3 Corvette. As many of you guys may know, it is actually located all the way back up in here under the windshield wiper cowl and everything. So what that means is basically the entire top of the engine has to come off. We got to take these fuel rail covers off, the intake manifold's got to come off, intake's coming out, all kinds of stuff. I've never taken apart this motor before, so it's certainly going to be an adventure. I know that the sensor's bad because I came out in the car this morning, and well, not this morning, but past few days, and the gauge has been showing 0 all the way at idle, and the dash has just 3 X's on it. So I'm assuming the sensor's probably filled with oil and shorted out or something, but I guess we'll see. All right, so I got my tools set out over here. I think I got everything I need. Some basic sockets. I got the fuel line disconnect. Got some Loctite for the, don't worry, this is blue too, for the intake manifold when it goes back on. Got a little plastic scraper so I can clean up the surface of the intake manifold when it's off, or the surface of the head rather, when it's off. Got a big crescent wrench so I can get the oil pressure sensor itself off. Got an inch-pound torque wrench, the Harbor Freight Special, and a screwdriver to get all the hose clamps and stuff off. Over here we got our parts. We got our intake manifold gaskets, we got our injector O-rings, and we have our sensor itself. All right, to get started here, we're gonna take our flathead screwdriver and undo our hose clamp to the front of the throttle body. Get that nice and loose. Make sure it's loosened up on both sides. Likes to stick a little bit sometimes. We're gonna get this little PCV breather line out. There's a little tab on the back side you gotta pull, and then that just pops right off. Nasty. And then the rest of this kind of just pulls off. There's these 3 little pins that hold it in all the way around. Usually pretty easy to pull up. And then we can undo our little mass airflow connector. If I can get around it. There we go. And we should be able to wrestle our intake off over here. It is stuck today. All right, I was finally able to wrestle that thing off. It was stuck around this back side and on the bottom, like usual. But we should be able to lift this out of the way and set it down over here. Next thing we can get doing is pulling these rail covers off. They just pop off real easy. This side's sometimes a little hard to get around the fuel line. May have to put the camera down again in a second. Let's get the other side first. They just pop off real easy. Gotta take the oil cap off to get this one. Set that aside. And just pull this guy off. We can set him down. And I'll get to that other side. It's kind of hard to wrestle around the fuel line, but it basically just goes around and through that slot. All right, so I got the other fuel rail cover off. Next, we're gonna come over here, and I already did it, but we have to unplug this map sensor over here. And then I think we are ready to start disconnecting the fuel rails and getting those things off. So I'm gonna grab one of my rags, 2 of my rags actually, and this pick, so we can come over to the Schrader valve that is on fuel rail, and we can get the pressure out of the fuel system. That way when we go to disconnect this line over here, it's not shooting out everywhere all in our face and uncontrolled. So we're gonna stuff a rag right under that valve, and just have another one over here just in case. And then there should be a little valve in there that we can press on with our pick and let, there we go. all the fuel pressure out. Now that all the fuel pressure is out of the rail, or most of the fuel pressure is out of the rail, I went ahead and closed our Schrader valve. Now we can get our screwdriver and pry this little clip off of the fuel rail. We're gonna set that aside with our parts where I hopefully won't lose it. And we're gonna take our disconnect tool for our fuel line, and we should be able to wrap around here and kind of just press in and pull the line, just like that. Just a little bit of fuel still leaking out. With that out of the way, I think we are ready to unbolt our fuel rails, which are just held in by these two 10mm bolts, and that's going to be the same on both sides. I thought we were going to be able to pull the fuel rails off, but it looks like this intake manifold bolt is holding it on with this little bracket, so it looks like we're going to go ahead and start loosening up the intake manifold. I'm going to loosen up in the same sequence for the most part that you tighten it, inside to out. Hopefully we don't have any issues. These aren't held on there very tight, something like 80 inch-pounds. But I'm going to get all these bolts. There's 10 of them. There's some a little farther in the back. And then once that's off, we should be able to pull the fuel rails. And then the whole intake will come off and we'll be ready to get to the oil pressure sensor. After I got the intake manifold unbolted, I was able to pretty easily pull this fuel rail assembly out. It just pops out, slides forward, super easy. These injectors are looking a little dirty, and these O-rings are certainly dried out, so I'm glad I went ahead and bought a new kit. We're leaking a little bit of gas. I leaked some all over the intake manifold too. I wasn't trying. But now, since everything's loose, I should be able to just pick up and pull this thing off. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it with one hand. That's kind of large. So I will be right back. Had to wrestle quite a bit, but we got the intake manifold off now, and as you can see, it is dirty up in there. So we are going to get our vacuum cleaner out and probably get all this debris, that way we don't knock anything inside our chambers. To get the manifold off, there was a big vacuum hose for the brake booster that kind of runs down and around through here. You have to unplug the oil pressure switch to get it off and snake it out. That way you can get the head out. Not the head, sorry, the intake manifold. And then there was all these breather lines have to be disconnected. They're really easy. You just press on this white part right here and it opens up. I did forget to do this one down here though. I broke the hose attached to it. It was an old little plastic hose. So we'll have to see what I got to do to replace that. But other than that, our oil pressure switch is right here. We're gonna get our crescent wrench on it after we clean all this up and swap them out. I got most of the mess cleaned up in the valley. I wasn't able to get every bit of grime off, at least not without using a bit of an abrasive. I tried a plastic razor, it helped a little bit, but overall, I mean, it's much better than it was before. I think we are ready now to come over and take our oil pressure switch off, which is this guy right back in here. So we're gonna use our crescent wrench and crack her loose. Got it on there. Ooh, come on now. There we go. And she's loose. Spin it off by hand now. All right. Usually these things fail and there's oil built up inside, but this one looks pretty clean. I'm not sure entirely what the problem is. The car does have about 110,000 miles on it. I checked our wiring, and our wiring still looks good. So I'm really hoping it is the switch. I was expecting to see a little bit of oil up in there. Anyway, we have our new one ready to go. Flush that out of the bag real quick. And it already comes equipped with the Loctite on it, the white Loctite. and a little bit of a crush washer. So we should just be good to go in here. I'm gonna rotate it counterclockwise first to make sure the threads seat. Oop, being a little difficult. I managed to get it on there. Threads are all seated and everything. Got it tight in my hand as far as I can go. That Loctite makes it a little difficult. Try to get you guys a good angle in here. But we're just gonna snug this thing down until we feel the crush washer completely crush, and we should be golden. Pull the cap off and start reassembling everything. Oil pressure sensor is in there. It is tight. I've got the cap off. I think I'm ready for reassembly. Other than I am gonna take each one of these injectors out, give them a quick little blast with some throttle body cleaner, throw some new O-rings on both sides, and then I think I'm finally gonna throw everything back together. All done cleaning. Actually replace the part finally. So I think we're ready. As you can see here, I've been working on the ejectors. Got this side entirely done, all cleaned up and new O-rings. Got these two done. Just have these two dirty ones left. What I've been doing here is pretty easy. You just pop these little clips off and then pull the injector out. So hard to do with one hand. There we go. And then pull the injector out. I'm using this little pick to get the blue and red O-rings off. And then when I go to put these new ones in, I dip them in this little bit of motor oil, new motor oil I have right here. That way they slide in nice and easy and they don't tear when I go to install them on the engine. We got everything buttoned back up. I got the fuel rails back on. I got the manifold back on and everything. Got our new sensor in back there. I fixed the lines that I broke earlier over here beneath the throttle body. I'm gonna replace those with the OEM ones probably, but for now there's just some fuel line on it, hold it together so there's not a massive vacuum leak. But I mean, install was, it was not too bad. Obviously manifold and taking everything off is a bit of a challenge for a lot of people, but it wasn't too hard putting it back on. All you got to do is follow the torque sequence. It's all over the internet. But other than that, I think we're good to start her up and listen. Sounds like an LS. Let's see if we have oil pressure. Looks like we have oil pressure on both gauge and on the dash. That's awesome. Well, there you go, guys. Until next time.